Hey guys, it's Lisette here and welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and give this video a thumbs up. Just a fun fact, you guys are balancing on my ottoman and like blankets, so yeah, just so you know. So today's video is going to be a story time, and this story time is going to be... Alright guys, so today's video is going to be a story time, and this story time is going to be about the time I saved my boyfriend's life. He literally almost died. So we're going to get into this video. So this happened oh my gosh, end of sophomore year, beginning of junior year of college. And this is my ex-boyfriend now, but you know, obviously he's my boyfriend during the time. So anyways, just a little background. It was our relationship was very stressful whenever it came to his family, because I felt like his mom or his grandmother, who like is his mom, didn't like me for anything, and I felt like I wasn't doing anything to warrant that. Like, she would just always make smart remarks whenever we would see her, and there was a point in time when I would see his family more than I would see my own mom, because they were always coming around and he felt like he always had to bring me with him. And if I wouldn't go, then that would be a problem as well. So that was the only part that was like bad about our relationship. Everything else was good. No one else was in our relationship. We didn't get into fights much. The only fights we ever got about were like family issues, which can be very big. So okay, so for I think it was maybe a good week or so, my boyfriend, I'm just gonna call him my boyfriend even though he's my ex now, my boyfriend at the time was just having these really bad migraines, he would say. And I guess another thing I should mention is that he has an immune deficiency. I can't remember what exactly it's called, but I just know it's an immune deficiency where like he could get sick very easily, and when he was younger he was constantly in and out of the hospital. So anyways, he was just having like these really bad migraines, and he would always like just pop migraine pills to make the pain subside. And I would tell him like, look babe, like we need to figure this out, like you shouldn't be having migraines for this long. I get college is hard, but like dang, because I don't believe in taking medicine like that. If like I'm on my period and I have horrible cramps, I just deal with it. If I'm in pain, I just deal with it. I usually do not take medicine. If it's like I absolutely need it, then like I'll take it. If it's prescribed, so if I have like strep throat or something like that, then I'll take it. But for other things, I won't. So I was trying to tell him like, look, stop taking this medicine. Like, let's just figure out what the root is. Like, you're not figuring out what the root is. You're just covering it up. But he was like, no, I just want to do this. So I was like, okay. So, fly just flew in here. So at the time, I used to work at the library on campus as a work-study job. And I remember I was at work and I would be at the front counter. So if you needed to check out books, if you needed to put money on your card to print, if you needed to get a study room, things like that, I would, that would be like my job. So anyways, one day he stumbles in, and I remember he had puke on the front of his shirt, and he just was so out of it. Most of the words that he was trying to say were very incoherent, sorry. But the one thing that he did say was, can you please take me to the hospital? And just by looking at him, I knew he had to go right away. So I clocked out of work early and I skipped. I believe I had 2 more classes afterwards. I knew that I could not. He was like, oh, we could just wait until after your classes are done. And I was like, no, we need to leave now, just by looking at him. So we left immediately. I didn't have my car on campus at the time, so I drove his car, and we went to the first hospital we went to. We got there, we sat for a little bit, and then I think he like gave them his insurance card, and they told us that his insurance wasn't taken there. So we went back in the car and we were like just Googling different hospitals. So I drove him to a different one, and we ended up, well, they took him back right away just because I guess by looking at him, they like could tell that something was up. And I was in the lobby or waiting room for hours. And I just remember that like they weren't coming to tell me anything. They weren't doing anything, and I kept going up to the counter and I was like, I'm here for blah blah blah, can you please tell me what's going on? And they kept like just telling me to go sit down. So then finally I got fucking fed up, and I marched up to the little receptionist and I was like, I am here for my boyfriend and I need to figure out what's going on. So I told her his name, and something was very wrong. So she was like, oh, you can go in the back to see him. And I thought that that was really weird, because usually you're not allowed to go in the back to see a patient if you're not family, you know, related, or you're not like married or something like that. So the fact that they let me back there, I actually am very glad. So I went back there. He was hooked up to IVs, and he was still very incoherent. And I remember when we were driving to the hospital, he kept saying that he didn't want me to tell his parents because like he didn't want them to get worked up. He thought it wasn't anything major. But looking at him lying in that hospital bed, I just knew that I had to call them. So I called his mother, and I'm on the phone with her, and I'm like, Mrs. last name here, I think you need they live in Houston, by the way, or like they live 3 to 4 hours away from where we were in college. And I was like, you need to get here. There's something wrong with him. They're not telling me anything right now, but something's really wrong with him. Something's really wrong with him. You need to get down here. And I remember that this lady has the nerve to say, why didn't you call me sooner? Blah, blah, blah. She starts like yelling at me, and I'm like, I'm here trying to tell you about your son. I mean, he's a grown-ass man at this point. He was either 21 or 22. I can't remember how old he is now, but he was a grown-ass man. So if he doesn't want you to be called, then you don't have to be called, because the hospital didn't even call you. I took the initiative to call you. So like, please simmer the fuck down. So I remember I stayed with him for more hours. And I also called his other mom. That story is very complicated. He has a grandmother that he calls his mom, and then his real mom as well. So I called his real mom, who does live in the same city as us, and she came right away. And so we were all just like waiting in the room with him. And then when his grandmother and grandfather came, it was just so hectic. Everyone was like yelling at each other, and people weren't really like focused on him. They were focused on basically causing a scene. And I remember it was really, really, really late at night, maybe like 2, 3 a.m. And of course I had school the next day, so they let me know like, look, Lisette, you can go ahead and go back on campus. And they were aware that I was driving his car. So they're like, you can go back on campus, and if anything happens, we will definitely let you know. And I was like, okay. So I remember driving back to campus, and I got in, we kind of like shared a room a little bit. Like we lived right across from each other. We didn't do it on purpose. But I went into his room, because obviously I had his keys, because I had his car keys. I went to his room, and I remember I was only there for a couple of minutes, and then I got a call from somebody, and they were like, Lisette, get back up here. It's very serious. But they told me to go to a different hospital, because he was transferred. So I rushed to the new hospital that he was relocated to, and everyone was sitting in the lobby, and I was like, what's happening? What's going on? What's going on? And they were saying that they got an x-ray of his brain, and there was an abscess growing in his brain, which is basically like, I guess you could compare it to a tumor. And so it was pushing his brain out of the way, so that obviously the abscess had room to grow. So it was pushing everything else around it away, so that way it could just like take over. And So that was the reason why he felt like he was having constant migraines, because there was pressure in his brain from everything that was happening on with that abscess. And so I remember the biggest argument going on was the neurosurgeon at that hospital wanted to work on him immediately, because the longer that you wait for things like that to happen, obviously the worse that it can get. Because before, I guess it was growing slower, but that day it just rapidly started to grow. And I remember his mother wanted him to be flown out to the CDC in Atlanta, or to his doctors in Atlanta, because that's where they were from, Georgia. And they kept saying like, ma'am, we can't get a helicopter in time. We can't get him on it in time. We can't get him from Texas to Georgia in time. Or, you know, like, if they try to do that, he's gonna die. And she was like, well, we need permission from his neurosurgeon before y'all cut into him. And I'm sorry, my cat's hair is everywhere in my apartment. It's her shedding season, so I feel like it's just really on my face. I'm sorry. So anyways, and the neurosurgeon there, I believe he was like top of the line. It was a really good hospital, but she was like really set on him going out to the CDC or whatever. And I remember that at this point in this whole situation, I wished that me and him were married, so that way I could have just told the doctors to go ahead, because obviously I had no say. And I just really remembered wishing that we were married, because before all of this happened, we actually would talk about marriage a lot. We did want to marry each other. We were talking about if we would try to have kids or not. We even went as far as going ring shopping, and we opened up an account, and I would like write out the different rings that I did like, so that way, you know, when he did want to propose, he would have options to pick from. Like, that's how serious we were in that relationship. So at this moment, I was like, man, I wish we were already married, so that way I could just tell the doctor to please just go ahead and do whatever you can to make sure that he is okay. So this was like a good at least hour passed by. And then finally the doctor came out and he said, you know what? He's an adult and he's about to die. So I am going to start operating on him immediately. And so the mom did not have a say anymore, because the doctor said if he waited any longer, that things would have been fatal. So we waited for him to get out of surgery, which was even more time. I don't believe he was not out of surgery before my classes started. So I left and I went to my classes, and I remember we had this one class together. It was called Media Ethics, with like the best teacher at this university, Professor Dr. Gwen. And like I said, me and my boyfriend had this class together, so I was so silent. And I finally, I believe I got a phone call from his mom or his auntie, somebody saying that he was out of surgery. And so I asked my teacher if I could leave, and he said yes. And I remember just telling the class if they could keep my boyfriend in his prayers, and I just started crying. And I hate crying in front of people. I hate crying in general, and then especially in front of people. So I just remember busting out into tears, and everyone was so supportive of, you know, the both of us. And then I remember I left from school early and I went to go see him. And this is when it was like movie magic or whatever. So I get to the hospital, I pay for parking, all that, and I forgot what room he's in. And I remember I walk in the room, and you know, like, he's hooked up to everything, so there's a heart monitor. I walk in the room, and as soon as he sees me, like, his heart monitor like starts going really fast. So obviously his heart was beating really fast. And at this time, immediately after his surgery, he could not speak because he had tubes and everything going down his throat to make sure to help him breathe. So he had to use a whiteboard. And I remember just walking in and just holding his hand. And this is the fucked up part. I was holding his hand and his mother comes over, and I had a friend with me at the time. We're not friends anymore, but she could attest to this. His mother comes over and pushes my hand out of the way and grabs his instead. And I was just like, so then he started writing. He kept writing like, I want Lisette. So then she even took the whiteboard away from him. And I'm just like she was very possessive over him, and I felt like it was in a way that is not healthy. A lot of parents, not a lot, but some parents put their son in the position that their husband should be in, especially like single moms and stuff like that, and I just think that that's disgusting. And so that's kind of like how this felt. It was just very annoying. So anyways, the rest of the story is his to tell if he ever wants to tell it. He's doing fine now. Yeah, but he's doing fine now. But the doctors did say after some time that I did save his life, and they said if I would have waited 1 minute more to get him to the hospital, that he would have passed away. And so I'm so glad that, you know, I skipped those classes, that I rushed into the hospital. And, you know, things like that, just, there's like, there is a God, obviously. Like, that's a miracle to me. I don't know how he feels about it at this point, but yeah. So I'm just really happy to say me and him aren't on the best of terms now. The reason why we broke up is after that was his first major surgery in this situation, and then he had to go in for a second major surgery for the abscess as well. And I remember the day before his second major surgery, he called me and he was just like, look, I think we shouldn't be together, blah, blah, blah. And you know, I wasn't about to sit there and argue with a man who just had a major surgery, who's going through recovery, and then needs to be in a good mindset for the surgery that he's about to go into in a couple of hours. So I was just like, okay, fine, we can talk about it later. And I remember I had 2 jobs. I worked at the library, and then I also worked in a daycare at a church. And I remember the next day, I believe it was a Wednesday, that was the day of his surgery, and I was at the church daycare, and I got a call from one of his family members. I believe it was from his aunt. And so I asked my boss if I could please go outside because my boyfriend's having major surgery. I thought like something went wrong, that one of his family members was calling me. And I pick up the call, and these people, like, it was like I think it was his aunt and then his real mom were like on the phone yelling and screaming at me like, why did y'all break up? Why'd you break up with him? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, first off, he broke up with me. Second off, your son/nephew is undergoing major surgery, and at this moment, instead of, you know, being in the lobby praying for his safety, you know, focusing on him, you want to call me and try to like start an argument over the phone? Nah. So like that was what pushed me over the edge, because I felt like I could never marry into that family because it would have just been too hectic. So my battery is about to die. That's the end of my story. That's the time that I literally saved my boyfriend's life. Him, his family, and the doctors all confirmed and like agree with that point. So I really am grateful, even though we're not friends now, I really am grateful that he is like doing okay. From what I can see on the outside looking in, he's graduating this May with his degree, and he has options, so I'm really glad for that. So yeah, if you want to hear more story times, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, and if I kept you here this long and you're still not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.